not pitter-patter around the issue here. That was a terrible, terrible loss. I would like 2 minutes to talk about that, Limits, like a 2-minute drive, and then I'm going to hand it over to Bob for his soliloquy. Are we ready for this? It doesn't matter if you have a time clock or not. Give me a 10-second warning when I'm getting close to the 2-minute line, okay?
I will do that.
Thank you, Limits. Bob, are you prepared for yours when I throw you the baton here?
I'm ready to say whatever I want to say concerning the situation.
Man,
yes,
there's a lot to talk about today, including two big issues, which would be Fields and Pickens. But I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with late in the game as the Steelers are driving for what would be the go-ahead touchdown. Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth praising Mike Tomlin and the Steelers to no end because they might win another ugly game at the end. Tirico said, in very complimentary fashion, I might add, we've seen this Steelers game 1,000 times, haven't we, Chris? And then Chris chimes in and says, they practice for this. They live for this. Why are we lauding Mike Tomlin and the Steelers for lowering themselves into a tug-of-war in the mud with the shorthanded Cowboys where they need a bounce somehow at the end to pull out another ugly win? What is commendable about that? Where has that gotten you? Honestly, where has that gotten you? Somebody should tell those two guys that the Steelers haven't won a playoff game in 7 years and that this formula doesn't work. It doesn't work. Dumbing yourselves down so you can win 13-11 every game doesn't work in the long run. It might get you in the playoffs. It might, or it might not. I don't know. Throw out the outlier season when they went 12-4 and got their asses handed to them by the Browns, and you've got 9-6-1, 8-8, 9-7-1, 8-8, 10-7, and now 3-2. This formula doesn't work, and we saw it manifested in the first half when they're driving, they're trailing 3-0, and they have a 3rd and 8 at the other team's 28, and they run a pitch out to a substitute teacher. I had a substitute teacher, Bob. Her name was Mrs. Newthart. We called her Mrs. Newfart. They going to feature her in next week's game? You're going to pitch out on 3rd and 8? Why do you do that? Because you're living in your fears. Because you don't trust your quarterback. Because you're playing for a field goal. Because you feel like your defense is going to win you the game in the end, except it didn't. And then you lament after the game, oh, we should have fallen on that fumble on 3rd down there. Fumbles are 50-50, and so is every damn Steeler game. The Cowboys didn't fall on a fumble. Justin Fields miraculously got it. Okay, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. Last year against the Browns, they got lucky in the home game early in the season. You don't always return an interception for a touchdown like Highsmith did. You don't always pick up a fumble, have it bounce right into your hands, and run for a touchdown like T.J. Watt did. When you leave it to those kinds of bounces at the ends of games, you're living a losing battle in the end. The other coach has done more in the past several years than Mike Tomlin, and he beat him in a Super Bowl. I'm sick of watching it. I'm sick of people lauding Tomlin for this, and it doesn't work. This formula doesn't work. If you have a quarterback that you don't trust to throw the ball on 3rd and 8 from the other team's 28, trailing 3-0 in the first quarter, then what the hell are we doing? Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Counselor. That was good. You went over, but it was worth it. It was a really spirited and passionate 2 minutes. So I will agree with a lot of what you're going to say because I went second and I happen to agree with a lot of your terms here. But I want to say this about how they operate. Mike Tomlin has always asked so much of his defense, so much. He asks really not much of his offense, and that has to change. You cannot go into these games, same theme that you're going to use here, playing not to lose, because when you do that, you invite whatever team it is to be in a position to beat you, and you're not always going to do that when your offense is putting up less than 200 yards, less than 95 yards passing, awful on 3rd down, 3 for 12. You just can't do it. It's simple. And it's to the point. Offense needs to be asked to do more. Slow starts. We hear it all the time. Slow starts. When it's convenient to say, well, we do not want these things, they affect the fluidity of a game, and yet when you lose a game, term it as insignificant, is just wrong. Slow starts have really been the problem here for the last several years. They don't get off to good first quarters. If you look at what happened in the first quarter and second quarter, over the past 5 games, we've played 10. They have 2 combined touchdowns in 10 quarters of football. You need to ask more of your offense. You must demand more of your offense. And when that happens, don't be afraid on 3rd and 8 to throw the ball. You're already in Boswell territory. Why play to protect a field goal? Go for something more. Go after it. Your quarterback cannot always be expected just not to fumble and not to throw an interception, because we saw last night. They lost the turnover game. They were -3 in the turnover game, and the offense did nothing with those 3 turnovers, and that's why they lost. But on the other hand, even though I said he's asking more of his defense, and the defense statistically is still pretty good, this is what you need to understand about their defense. They are being victimized by this offense, because offense needs to score to put some points between themselves and give them a little cushion. Instead, in the fourth quarter, involved in a 3-point game, the defense, when called upon, if it's championship caliber, must stop the other team. They did not do that. 95-yard drive in the fourth quarter, a 70-yard drive in the fourth quarter. They did not make key plays. Their run defense got gouged by back-to-back weeks now, especially yesterday, a team that came in one of the worst run teams in football.
Yes.
And they got gouged. Their run defense gave up over 100 yards to someone no one really knew. Not to mention 3rd down conversions. We talk about it on offense. It applies on defense. Their 3rd down conversions getting off the field are horrendous in this game. Quite frankly, if you looked at the yards of this game, and the yards kind of tell the story here, Dallas dominated in every statistical category, and somehow they still managed, because of it, they managed to be -3 in the turnover. They had 11 penalties. They also had a field goal blocked. All of this on the road, and they still won a football game. How is that possible? And the only reason it is because the offense hasn't been really called upon to do much. Just don't turn the ball over. That is a losing proposition, and it'll get you what you've gotten, which are close games, tight to the vest. If that's the way you want to play them, you better win them all. If that's the way you want to do it, you can't afford to lose a game like this at home against a team that, quite frankly, was minus a lot of its key players, just like last year when last week, Indianapolis minus a whole bunch of their star players, and yet they still were able to build a 17-0 lead from which they could not dig out. So this falls on the offense, in my mind, principally number one, but the defense, when called upon, didn't do the job.
So it falls on Tomlin, in other words. And
well, again, you're asking too much of your defense and nothing of your offense.
The defense stinks.
But you can't ask your offense to do nothing.
I know.